Hello again and welcome back. My name is Chris and I am your host. With me tonight are Tiff.
Hi.
And Dan.
Hey.
And Dean is not here because he's busy building a computer that he would need to do this show. This week we'll be taking a look back at what we played in the month of April. As it turns out, it was a big month for Mahjong simulations. So grab your Chinese character tiles and claim your table position. This is the Stone Age Gamer. Hi everyone and welcome to tonight's show. This is episode 48 of the Stone Age Gamer podcast, which means we've almost been doing this for a year. We probably have been doing it for a year if we count all the weird half episodes, but we're not going to do that because we can't count.
Nope.
And anyway, tonight we will be discussing our games of April. We didn't do it last week because of the whole Star Wars thing, which was fun. But I don't think any of our games of April were Star Wars games. So why don't we get me out of the way, because it's the closest to Star Wars. My game of April was Space Harrier. Let me explain. I've never played Space Harrier before.
End of podcast. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for coming.
I don't even know why I picked it for this month, because I haven't even played it. But I just thought, would do that.
So, Space Harrier is one of those games I've always been aware of. I've known of its general existence, and I guess it's kind of a lie. I did play Space Harrier very briefly, but the only version I'd ever played was the Master System game, and for very briefly. And I just didn't care. I wasn't blown away by it. I was not impressed.
It's weird.
It's weird. It's choppy. It's difficult. It's not... I didn't find it very fun, and I wasn't into it. And I don't know why I didn't make the assumption that the arcade version would be so much better, but I didn't. I just kind of gave up on Space Harrier. It's like, whatever, I don't know what Space... It's like 3D World Wonder, but Sega's version. Whatever.
With a woolly mammoth with one eye.
Exactly, with a cycloptic woolly mammoth. I could not have been more wrong. And another podcast I listened to, they were talking over and over again about how good the Sega 3D Classics Space Harrier was on the 3DS. And I've downloaded a couple of those 3D Classics, and they're great. Sega's been doing these 3D remasters of their games on the 3DS, and when I say 3D, I mean that they're taking the way the game originally looked on its original platform and then applying the 3D effect to it. So they're not redoing like the game with polygons or something and making it that kind of 3D.
It is still 2D, but 3D 2D.
Exactly, 3D 2D. And for a game like Space Harrier, they actually had to do a considerable amount of work to make that work in 3D, because the way the game worked in the arcade was it created the illusion of depth, but there wasn't
it's
like
2D with depth.
with depth. When I finally found out that this game used the same graphic styling as some of my favorite classic Sega arcade games like Outrun, Hang On, and the infinitely awesome Afterburner, I thought, wow, this game might actually really be amazing. So I ponied up I think it was $8, and I downloaded Space Harrier on the 3DS, and I was instantly just captivated. I love the music. I love the title screen, which is the cycloptic woolly mammoth, some weird dude in like a jeans and a red jacket waving hello with a big smile on his face, and some creepy looking giant robot and the word Space Harrier, which when you think about it makes absolutely no sense.
Why does he float?
Nothing about this game makes any
no
sense.
Explanation.
Like you're running along.
And why
and
is the ground plaid?
Who knows? Because it looks cool when it's flying at you. I got nothing. It reminded me a lot of Sin and Punishment, which at least in that game you had a jetpack, so it made sense that your little character could fly around. But you're running around.
Maybe he's the Space Harrier, because a Harrier levitates, kind of like a Harrier airplane has a vertical takeoff and it hovers.
That makes sense.
Did the Harrier even exist when this game came out? I don't even feel like it did.
Hover boots.
Hover boots.
He's got hover boots.
Of course.
Well, then why isn't it Space Hover Boots?
That is nowhere near as catchy a name. Yo, dude, have you played fucking Space Hover Boots?
Space Hover Boots? That sounds amazing. Can I space hover?
Yeah, and there's a mammoth in it. But hold on. He only got one eye, though.
Oh, my God. Here's all my quarters. Best game ever. 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
So yeah, it's if you've ever played Sin and Punishment, it's like a behind the character. It's almost like a shoot 'em up, but from behind the character, and you can move freely, flying up and down and levitating or whatever the hell this character's doing, and you've got this weird glowing. Jeez, it almost looks like bagpipes, except a gun that's just like he's holding under his armpit. It glows and it shoots infinite lasers all over the place, and it's a pretty simplistic thing, but it moves really fast, and the 3D effect is this weird. It's this retro kind of thing, almost like Mode 7, but way cooler, and it has this great retro style to it, and the 3D remaster is just the amount of work they put into it to make this game really work in 3D is astonishing. Like if you have a 3DS, you've got to try this game out because first off, it works really well with the circle pad. Like the controls feel really good, and then just taking into consideration that 3D effect, it's just outstanding. But the music is, like I said, is great. It's just a catchy tune that I've actually put on at work. I'll go to YouTube and find like 30 minutes of the Space Harrier song and then just listen to it all the way through while I'm typing, which is great. But man, it's just classic Sega at its finest, and it just makes my heart bleed for the time when Sega was just so weird and so cool when it was coming up with awesome stuff like this and Fantasy Zone and Afterburner and
It's what's really weird to me about this game too is that I've always, I mean, I think pretty rightfully so, identified Space Harrier with Sega platforms.
Well, yeah, it's a
right?
Sega game, yeah.
Made by Sega, so naturally you would think Sega platforms. But Space Harrier has been on like damn near everything.
Yeah.
There was there's even an NES version of Space Harrier that was put out by Tengen.
Yeah, they did a bunch of Sega stuff. They did Fantasy Zone,
they just stole
Alien
shit.
Syndrome. Well, I mean, it was like, they were a subsidiary of Atari at the time, and they didn't give a crap about being licensed, and Sega was just like, sure, you're selling our games, I don't care what system it's on.
Yeah.
And so they just kind of went for it. And in some cases, those ports were really good. Like, I actually think the Fantasy Zone on NES was better than the Master System one. Fantasy Zone 2, on the other hand, was glorious on Master System. But
well, sure. But I remember this game from the arcades, the sit-down cabinet with the flight stick controller, because that was always the problem playing it on the home systems. And it was a little better on... I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the Master System, did that have on the controller a little, like, joystick you could screw into it for the thumb pad?
I don't believe so. There was, I definitely know there was
what the hell system was that?
There was a PC controller that was like that, the ASCII
no,
pad.
I think that controller that we had was like an
one...
aftermarket thing, that it was purple, and it had like a little hole that you could screw it in.
This was back in the day. I remember having a controller that you could screw a very tiny joystick into, like right into the center of it.
Almost like a PlayStation.
Yeah,
like almost like an analog
just a little
stick.
nubbin.
And that, like, I seem to remember playing this game, playing Space Harrier with that, but like playing it on the home consoles with the D-pad, you lost a lot of the sense of motion
like
that
flow.
the game had.
Yeah.
Because your character, since you are stationary, like, everything is just kind of coming at you. It's like, Space Harrier is very similar to those old, like, stand-up games that, like, they would sell versions of Frogger. And it was just, the game board was on, like, a roll. And the roll would spin on a wheel, and like the scenery would come at you, but you would just move your character from left to right. You weren't actually jumping over anything. Nothing would actually hit you because there was no interaction. It was just, a picture kind of just rolling at you. Space Harrier is very, very similar to that. Your character is stationary. You don't actually move forward. Everyth's just flying at your face.
Kind of like Star Fox.
So while you're sitting there, yeah, very similar to Star Fox. So as you're sitting there with your hover boots in the arcade and using your space hover boots, using the joystick, there was this really great sense of circular motion as you were playing. You could get that character kind of all over the place. And it flowed really nicely. And I would imagine playing it with that little circle doodad on the 3DS, which I believe is that the official Nintendo term,
it's
Chris?
The circle
I don't
pad
have one.
Is what it is officially called.
Right, circle doodad. That's what we're going.
Yes.
Fucking.
But with a regular D-pad, wouldn't it kind of try to be like trying to do diagonals on an Etch-a-Sketch?
Kind of?
Yeah, I mean, it works all right on a D-pad. Because I also downloaded this game on the Wii Virtual Console just to get the... I just wanted a version of the original arcade game, and it's available on there, so I gave it a download, and you can play it with the D-pad, and it controls all right with the D-pad, but once I plugged in the classic controller and was playing with an analog stick and playing it on my big screen TV instead of the tiny 3DS screen, oh man, I need to find an arcade cabinet of this, because... I'm impressed. I'm sad that I missed it for all those years.
It was super fun.
Yeah, it is super fun. But it's another one of those, like, this just keeps happening to me, or I'm discovering retro games that I've never given a chance to. Like, I recently did the whole Wonder Boy thing. I just never played it before, and now I'm playing it, and it's great. So Space Harrier, specifically 3D Space Harrier on the 3DS, not 3D Space Harrier on Master System, which sucked.
I am, just as a quick aside, I am currently looking at a picture of a Sega Master System control pad that has the little arcade joystick screwed into it.
Wow.
So I'm not crazy. That is a thing that happened. And because that control pad was not a D-pad, but was just kind of a big
square,
rounded edge square.
Omnidirectional.
Oh my goodness, you're right. Now that I need to find a picture of this. I'm totally having a... Because when you started talking about it, I was thinking about the ASCII pad for PCs, which was like, an early 90s pad. It looked like a Super Nintendo controller. And I remember you had that little joystick you screw in, but what you're saying is actually starting to ring a bell with me. I've got to look that up.
I'm looking at a picture on giantbomb.com. I just Google image searched Master System controller, and it popped up like 3 or 4 in. And then there's another one, like a picture of it, like just the screw hole and not the joystick plugged in. I knew I wasn't crazy. But that made it...
screw hole a lot.
I don't know. That made it a lot easier to control, when I played it on my Master System with that little arcade joystick. It just gave you a better sense of movement, and control, really, for lack of a better term, of the character on screen.
Yeah, I imagine it would. I have seen this before. I forgot that was even a thing, because there's other Master System controllers that don't have that option.
Right.
They're just flat in the center. Those are what I'm more familiar with. Oh man, I totally forgot that existed. Well, yeah, neat. All right, yay, Space Harrier. Cool game. Go play it.
Not to be confused with Space Hover Boots.
No, way cooler.
Although, if you think about it, if you were in space, you wouldn't really need hover boots.
Ooh.
That's deep.
Speaking of deep, what's your game, Tiff? What was your favorite game of April?
I'm not going to say favorite. I will say the one that I've spent the most time and, brain power on. We got the Metroid Prime Trilogy for the Wii U. What was that, a couple months ago? That I remember last
whenever
month?
It was on sale.
Whenever it was on sale. We got it.
Mostly because the disc version is like $100 and
money.
the download was $10. I went, okay, that works.
I had never played Metroid Prime originally. I, like everyone else, was like, this isn't Metroid, bleh, and just kind of dismissed it. So we got it, and we were actually at coming to the end of a Wii Wednesdays with the children and playing Pikmin. I wasn't really done playing, and I saw it there sitting on our little dashboard, so I was like, yeah, I'll just turn this on and play with it for a little bit. Now, I'm not going to go through the story because it's Metroid Prime. We all know what Metroid is. But I'd really like to talk about the gameplay mechanics.
Wait, before we get there, did you know that the main character is a girl?
Dun dun dun.
I had heard a rumor.
Holy shit.
I had heard a rumor.
Sorry.
Alright, so I don't know how this controlled on GameCube. I would imagine relatively well, because it was relatively well received. but I'm having some issues on the Wii. On the one hand, I feel that it is brilliant. I love the change in perspective. I really thought that I was going to hate that because I am not a fan of first-person shooters at all.
Neither am I.
But I'm finding it really, really intuitive, and I think they've done a really nice job doing that. For the most part, I think the Wii Controls is also very cool. I like the looking around with the nunchuck. It took me a little bit to be able to like coordinate both my hands on, because obviously I'm in these types of games, you're accustomed to having your hands right next to each other on a single controller, and in this way, one hand is going this way and one hand is going that way to try and get the character to do one thing on the screen. It's very disorientating at the start, because typically when playing this type of game, you have both hands together on a single controller. You have them right next to each other, working together for a common goal. On the Wii, you have one hand over here on the nunchuck looking around. You have the other hand over here turning visors on, and it was very, very strange for me to get used to initially.
It is jarring, because it's very different, yeah.
It is. And especially once I got to the first part where I had to morph ball, I was like, it's going to take me all day to get into this tunnel. I cannot control this thing. I am all over the place. This is not going to work. But once I kind of got the hang of it and got the hang of like toggling the visor and whatnot, it started to feel very natural. My hand disagreed because once I stopped playing it, after that first like kind of marathon session of like really trying to get into it, once I'd stopped playing with it, not only was my hand super cramped, but my shoulder hurt for the rest of the night, which I found very strange. But aside from that, I found it very cool. I found, especially, when enemies would come in, that first boss battle, I have a tendency to panic in those situations, which is why first-person shooters don't usually go well for me. But even in my panic state, I found myself just kind of naturally working the controls.
And you can lock on to things, which I found, like, clutch.
Okay, well, let me get to that point. I would have loved to lock on to things. I don't know if this is inherently an issue with the system, if it's an issue with the game, or if it's an issue with my personal controller, but I could not keep my controller in direct communication with this game at all. And it seemed most likely to happen when there would be multiple enemies in the room. I would suddenly lose the ability to look around. My nunchuck would no longer be doing something. There were several times when I would lose the ability to walk, and just
that's weird.
Yes, it was very weird. We changed the batteries. I switched the controller to a different Wiimote. We moved the sensor bar to a different part on the television. Like, we switched the sensitivity around, and just nothing I could do would get it to hold for very long at all. Like, we would do something and I'd be like, okay, that fixed it. So then I would start going through and things would start happening again, and then big panicky scene, and it would stop responding again. And that was extraordinarily frustrating. I'm not gonna knock the game for that, because obviously I feel like if that was a common problem, we would all know about it, because,
yeah,
video game fans are not known to be, subtle about their emotions.
Known to be quiet when it comes to complaining about controls.
Right. So I'm not going to knock the game, because when the controls were working, it was fabulous. It was one of the most enjoyable video game experiences that I've had in a long time. It just felt very unique, yet very fluid. I was just really, really going with it.
That sucks. I'm so sorry to hear that, because, I've never experienced anything like that when playing the game. The game I played through on the Prime Trilogy disc, as well as originally on GameCube, but I never really experienced that kind of an issue in any of the Prime games. It sounds like some sort of interference thing.
It does, but we've never really had an issue with the other games that we've played.
Yeah. Right, it was just
this one.
Yeah,
and
maybe
so
it's something. I haven't really heard anybody talk about the specific Wii U download version. Maybe it's some sort of bug with that. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm certainly going to keep trying to fix it because I am very much enjoying it. The other kind of issue that I had with the controls is anyone that's played this game, and it's pretty notable to this game, is the visor system that this game uses. There's 4 different visors. You got the battle visor, then you've got the scanning visor, and then there's the infrared and X-ray. And you toggle between these different visors to do different things in the game. You have to use them all. It's not an optional kind of thing. And it really makes the game so much richer than I feel like any of the other Metroids ever were. Like, obviously the other Metroids have a story, but I never really got the story the way that I'm getting it with
the scan
this
visor
version. Yeah, with the scan. I mean, and it's so much information.
There is so much information.
So much. But I like that because it eliminates that kind of panic feeling that makes me dislike first-person shooters because it slows it down.
Yeah.
I don't feel like the goal is to get... And I know that Metroid Prime is super popular for speed runs, but I have a lot of anxiety and I can't handle that kind of pressure.
Well, it also, it gives you the option, too. Like, none of that stuff is necessary. You can have as much or as little story as you want, which I thought was a really great way of tackling something like that.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, for guys like you and me, Chris, who have played through every Metroid game that has come out, the scan visor is kind of cool, and you're like, oh, this is a thing, and I can learn some more information. I don't really need to know all this, though. Like, I can just kind of make my way through here.
Yeah, but
whereas if you haven't played the game, there is so much information, and it's actually what I was impressed with, because I had never played it on the GameCube originally either, because I was also very much looking down my nose of this is not Metroid, first person, go fuck off, Nintendo, right, and just ignored it. But they spent a good amount of time and had quality people writing those little tidbits of information. Like, so often in games you get that, like, here's the information thing and it's fucking stupid. You know, this was really well done.
And there was so much in it that kind of tied towards other games and like little nods. Like there were times that the space pirates in communication with each other are talking about things that Samus had done previously, and like it was really cool. It was really, really cool, and I really dug it. However, with this visor system, and I know that the thing that just came out on the Wii U is just a port over from the original. They upscaled the graphics a bit, but that's it. However, I feel like they missed a golden opportunity here, and I think they could have had a full re-release if they had incorporated the gamepad.
Oh, you're
absolutely
right.
Because if you could play with the gamepad as a regular controller and then hold the gamepad up to the screen, and that would toggle through your visors so that through the gamepad screen is where you were scanning things or where you were looking at the X-ray, this would be the best game in the world. Like, in the history of ever, this hands down the best game of all time.
Hopefully when they make a new Metroid game, if they make a new Metroid game, they do that. Because I've had that same thought, that would be amazing to be able to hold the gamepad up and use that as a visor.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting how you're talking about the controls, because the GameCube one also notoriously did not control like a typical first-person shooter. The controls were very different.
The most frustrating part about it for me is having to try to unlearn everything that is inherent in me playing a first-person game.
Well, but I think that's really why you and I are having such different experiences with this, is because you are a practiced first-person shooter player, and I am not. So there is nothing that I have to unlearn, and I'm actually finding this fairly intuitive.
I'm with
Tiff, I'm finding that I am so much more successful in this game when the controller is actually working. This has been the first-person shooter that I have ever played that I have not had to, like, when I enter a room and there are 7 bad guys in here, that I don't immediately hand the controller to Dan and say, kill them for me, and then I'll get it back and go do something else, because I panic and I just can't do it. I panic. And panic in first-person shooters does not work out really well. But I'm not finding that to be the case here. I am still panicking, but through my panic, I am still able to function and kill everybody. And that's kind of nice.
Yeah, first-person shooter controls have never come natural to me at all. And Metroid Prime on the GameCube, with that lock-on ability, I was able to get the hang of it really quickly. And then when Metroid Prime 3 came out, which was the first one that was actually designed for the Wii, it just felt so natural to me because it's so much closer to a keyboard and mouse setup than a dual analog setup.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's kind of exactly how that feels.
And it just
as if you were
just worked for me.
Yeah.
My biggest gripe against this is that I wish they would have included an option for the GameCube controls in this Wii U re-release.
Yeah, I do agree. Like, if you could play this game with traditional first-person shooter controls, it should be an option. But there was kind of like a big deal when they were making the game in the first place, is that they didn't want this game compared with first-person shooters, because it's like, it is a shooter, but it's more a Metroid game, which took me a while to get the hang of, because I remember the first time playing through Metroid Prime, I was simultaneously excited at the same time, like, I can't believe they made Metroid into a first-person shooter, but, like, the first time I charged up my gun and shot it near something and I could see my reflection in the visor, I was like,
oh my
is
God, so great.
This is really
so
cool.
Great.
And I remember getting about halfway through, it was a little bit less than halfway through the first Metroid Prime, and I'm looking at my map and I'm trying to figure out, like, where I'm going to go and everything, and I said to myself, holy shit, I'm playing Metroid. Like, this is exactly how I played Super Metroid and how I played Super Metroid. I'm like looking at the map and figuring out what doors I could go through and what item's going to get me through here. I spent so much time plotting my course looking at that 3D map, which is brilliantly designed.
I am actually finding that a little more difficult than a traditional Metroid game. I'm finding it more difficult.
Well, it definitely is.
In a 3D space to backtrack.
Yeah.
Because to my mind, so much of Metroidvania style games is, I got this thing. Okay, now I need to go back to that thing. So now I just go back along the path I was just on. And in the 3D space, there were actually several times during the game that I thought that I was going back to do the thing and went, oh, wait, where am I? This isn't where I meant to go. Oh, I went the wrong way out of that door. And so, like, especially, there were several times where a lot of the mechanics used to move the story along or to get to a next chapter or whatever is enter the hologram. I found myself several times when I would come back out of the hologram, I was a little turned around. So when I thought I was backtracking, I was actually going in a different direction. Or when I thought I was going forward, I would end up back at the front door again. I'm like, wait, what? Where am I? So I did find that a lot more complicated and a lot more difficult than a traditional Metroidvania game. But it was still very, very enjoyable. And what I think they did so well, and I think a lot of video games try and do this, but it just seems so successful in this one, is that when you get to the end, and when you get to the Metroid Prime, and it's time to fight the Metroid Prime, you have to use absolutely every single step that you have taken along the way in the whole game in order to beat the Metroid.
Every trick in the book.
And it's not like a regular video game where, like, bum-ba-da-bum, you got the flaming sword of mastery, and, I wonder what I'm gonna need to beat the boss. No, with the Prime, you have to use everything. You have to use every visor, you have to use every weapon, you have to use everything that the game has taught you up until this point to beat the Metroid, and that they just did it so brilliantly and so seamlessly that you don't even really notice that the game has done that to you. You know what I'm trying to say?
I do, yeah. No, it's really masterfully done. I mean, minus the little, getting the key fetch quest towards the end, it's really one of the most flawless 3D game experiences I've ever had. Now, did you play any of Prime 2 or Prime 3?
I have not gotten there yet because we can't work out the issues with the controls, and that is maddening.
Well, all right. So Prime 2 is rough. Prime 2 is like, it's very dark, and I mean like physically dark. Like, it takes place on a planet called Aether, and it's
called dark.
Yeah, called dark. It's all dark.
We ain't got no lights.
There's lots of dark. It's really hard. I heard that the Prime Trilogy version actually kind of cleaned up some of the insanely difficult parts. Some of the bosses were like really tough, but it's got a really, really dark atmosphere to it, and it's cool, but it's not quite as, like, to me, none of them caught the magic that the first Metroid Prime did. They came close. Like, they're extremely good games, but they're not quite the perfect storm of awesomeness that was the first Metroid Prime. Prime 3, however, uses motion controls, like the gesture controls, in a way that, God, if more games used them that way, then there would probably be a very different opinion of Wii's motion controls, because they use them very subtly and very occasionally. Like, there'll be parts of the game, like, because, you're using your pointer for the majority, for the game. You're pointing it at everything, and there will come a point where you'll go to a door, and you'll just need to turn a key, and you'll just turn the controller to turn the key.
That's
like,
cool.
You just pick up the key and then put it where it goes. You fly your ship by pressing buttons on the ship. Like, you just point and press a button, and the hand on the screen is pressing buttons to fly your ship. I think they mapped this in Prime, right, with the grapple beam, where you shake the nunchuck to shoot the grapple beam. That just feels so good, because it's a very simple gesture. It's not anything you need to be precise with. It's just a little...
like casting a fishing line.
Exactly, just a little shake, and then you've got your grapple beam, and it's awesome. But I will say that in Prime 2, they introduced the screw attack, which I had no concept of how they were going to make that work in 3D, but it feels great. They did a wonderful job with the screw attack in Prime 2 and 3, so...
Well, it certainly seems like we need to get our controller situation worked out before I go on then.
Yeah, get that worked out.
And you know what it might be? I think our controllers are third party, aren't they?
Yes.
I think our Wiimotes are third party, because we got them for the kids for Christmas, and they had to have matching pink ones.
Wow.
So I think that might be, we might have to dig out one of our actual for real Nintendo controllers.
I will also say the one other thing that I have to say about Metroid Prime before moving on is that anything about those 3 games, particularly the second one, the design of the worlds are so interesting, and so, like, they never repeat themselves. And you were saying about getting lost, and that's one of the things that helped me find my way in Metroid Prime and in all of the games, is that with the exception of Dark Ether, because there's like a light dark world thing you go through in the second Metroid Prime, the environments are so organic. Like, you so rarely feel like you're just walking down a generic gray corridor. It's always like, it feels lived in. It feels like this is a structure that was created, and you can actually learn your geography by landmarks, which is how I do geography in real life. Like, I rarely remember street names or anything. I remember things
Church
by
with
where
a spire.
they are. Yeah, exactly. And that I've never seen a game approach creating environments quite like the Metroid Prime trilogy in that regard. It's just really one of my favorite things about them.
Well, and it is stunningly beautiful. I mean, I don't think there ever has been a more visually impressive move from 2D to 3D. I mean, I mean, from the moment that you get out of your ship and you have to navigate that platform to get into the space pirate ship at the very beginning. I mean, it's just, I had to stop for a little bit and just look around. I'm like, this is amazing.
It's a rare example, like we were talking about in the Metal Gear episode. Like, Metal Gear Solid 2 for PlayStation 2 still looks good. This game is a GameCube game, and it still looks good. Like, not just for a GameCube game. Like, it's aged, but it's still, the art direction is so strong that it works.
Yeah, and it just looks good.
They did ramp it up a bit for the Wii, because I mean, you can look at a side, but there were a couple of times where I was like, all right, I'm consulting the YouTubes because I don't know what's happening here. And if you watch like GameCube Let's Plays and whatnot of it, and look at it on the Wii U, they have bumped it up. They have improved it. They've smoothed out the edges a little bit.
Yeah,
and
there's a little bit of anti-aliasing. I think there's some texture
beautiful
upgrades, but also if you're playing it on a GameCube, you're not going to be able to play it in any level of HD. So it's going to look.
That's true.
Still looks nice on a CRT, but the other cool thing about it is that when they did the transfer into the Wii version, they put it in widescreen, which was really just that extra little thank you. Wonderful, wonderful game.
Boo! No, I'm just kidding. That's all right.
All right, well, we're going to take ourselves a quick break, and when we come back, we'll find out what Dan was up to in April. So, stick around. And now here's a look at some of the other original content available right now at geekade.com. First up, we've got a new Bits and Brews article by our very own Dan Ryan. This time he pairs Bourbon County brand stout with the legendary Mega Man 2, assumedly because it tastes like robots in frustration.
It does. Then, did you know, you should, but did you know that we have a weekly Game of Thrones recap / book comparison?
The heck you say?
I do, sir.
Wow.
It's called Game of Spoilers.
Very clever title.
It was very clever.
We thought long and hard about it.
It's all new every Tuesday, 2 days after the episode comes out, so there's no excuse for you not to be caught up.
That's right.
Even if you miss it on Sunday, because you're watching like a super cool wrestling thing that I probably wrote about.
You still have all of Monday.
You still have all of Monday night.
Because of Tuesday mornings. First thing.
Yeah. In case you forgot, this is a stark reminder to check out Game of Spoilers on geekade.com. Get it? Stark,
that was a terrible pun.
like the Starks in Winterfell.
It's a terrible pun, and I'm disappointed in you.
Ha 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 ha.
In the meantime, the Aphthousiasts saw the Avengers Age of Ultron along with all of us except Dean, and they survived the robot apocalypse. Find out what they thought of it in the most spoiler-free podcast of all time. Don't miss Apathetic Enthusiasm, episode 12, Avengers and...
HoloLens.
Sure, a symbol.
It's a new Microsoft thing.
Yeah, looks neat.
It does look cool. So, you know what's amazing?
Avengers Age of Ultron.
That really was amazing.
It was so good.
I know,
It was good.
has Dean seen it yet?
I have no idea, but he should. He should be seeing it right now. That's the only excuse
really
to not
should
be on
be.
the podcast.
That movie was fucking incredible.
Awesome.
Anyway, do you know what else is amazing?
What else is amazing?
Virtual Boy.
Virtual Boy is amazing.
It's, quite frankly, it's my favorite system of all time.
I wish I had one right now.
I love it. I'm wearing one right now.
I'm jealous.
I wish you were wearing the one that I'm wearing.
But then you wouldn't be wearing one.
You're right. I do have one for each eye, though. I mean, I could share, but I love this system so much that you're like, hey, can I play Virtual Boy? I'm like, fuck you. No, you can't. I know it's Mother's Day, but whatever. It's my Virtual Boy.
You made me sad tonight.
Piss off.
Oh, okay.
See, now, here's the thing, though. Collecting, like, physically collecting the 7 games that they put out
Hey,
for the Virtual
14.
Boy. Sorry, how dare I jip
Wait,
it by half?
there was something other than tennis?
Yeah, surprisingly enough.
Okay.
See, the thing is that it's an extremely expensive hobby.
Sure. Because they're so in demand.
Well, one of the most expensive games that you can get for the system is the Atlas Classic Jack Brothers.
You're making it up.
Is it worth the hefty price tag, I ask?
Probably not.
Well, I don't know. You should probably check out Lost in Time, Jack Brothers, on geekade.com.
I'll have you know that I wrote this script. I wrote that one specifically for Dean to read, and I had to write out the word brothers, even though it is abbreviated in the game title, because whenever Dean sees BROS, he'd pronounce it bros, which drives me up the damn wall.
Oh, you know, Super Mario Bros.
Yeah, Super Mario Bros. Smash Bros.
Every time he says that, I get an image of Mario and Luigi with like 3 collars popped and too much spray tan and like a blowout.
Because they're bros.
Mm-hmm.
Way too much cologne.
And finally, we here at Geekade love moms. Just ask Marge DeFalco. In fact, some of us even are moms. I'm not a mom.
I am.
Way to go. As such, we had not 1, but 2 new Mother's Day themed articles go up on Sunday. Or at least I hope we did, because we're recording this on Friday, and Sunday hasn't happened yet. But it will by the time you hear this. So if all goes well, check out the new Think Tank articles from Aaron Abamundi and my lovely wife, Karen Randazzo.
Chris,
yeah.
what if we told you about messing with the time streams?
You can catch all this, plus tons of other articles, videos, podcasts, and more exclusively at geekade.com. And we are back. I have officially cheated Dan out of 5 minutes. And I'll never get them back.
Bastard.
Speaking of Dan, since we don't have Dean tonight, why don't, Dan, you go next, because Tiff and I already went. So what was your game of April?
Your logic is flawless.
It's true.
See, we here at Geekade and at the Stone Age Gamer are big fans of Metroid. Right. We're also big fans of my least favorite term in all of video games, Metroidvanias.
That's your least favorite term? You say that at least 6 times a day.
Because it's...
Every day.
I know,
you wouldn't
but I
think
hate
you would
it.
find so many things that would apply to, but...
Like what else could we call them?
Like
Metroid-style
the
games,
Metroidvania
because
at this
Castlevania Symphony of the Night was a Metroid-style game. I don't know why
to call them...
Castlevania gets, like, half the credit for that style of gameplay. Like, yeah, Symphony of the Night was amazing. Metroid did it 3 times before that game came out.
Yeah, it did. Well, I don't know, like, because the MSX version incorporated elements of the MSX Castlevania had Metroidvania...
Yeah, it had some of those tendencies to it, and so did, Simon's Quest, but, so did Blaster Master, so did Wonder Boy 3, and Wonder Boy 2, for that matter. Like, lots of
Can we
games
just call
had
them,
that.
like, returners or something like that, because you have to return
I always
to
just
certain
called them
areas?
adventure games.
Or backtrackers.
I always called them adventure games.
Grim Fandango's
like,
an adventure game.
Non-linear. Non-linear adventure games.
A side,
okay.
I guess you can't really call it side-scrolling, but that's what I always consider. Anytime you had to walk into several rooms several times to pick shit up, that's an adventure game.
Fair enough. So, we're big fans of non-linear adventure games here as well. And a lot of the games that are coming out now, a lot of the indie games, which are the bulk of what I've spent my time playing, because I don't have time to devote to a 50-hour Grand Theft Auto quest. Plus, I'm just not interested because...
There are 50-hour Grand Theft Auto quests?
Yeah, spoiler alert, Grand Theft Auto is a shitty game.
Apparently, I just don't think you're playing it right if it's taking you 50 hours to do a Grand Theft Auto quest.
You get no arguments here.
Yeah, no, it's not good. So, the game that consumed my April was Axiom Verge, which is not just a side-scrolling non-linear adventure game inspired by Metroid. It is a side-scrolling non-linear adventure game that just is Metroid.
In different colors.
It's Metroid without Samus. And that is not a knock against this game. The simple fact that Axiom Verge was developed by a dude, one guy, Thomas Happ, who has had some previous experience in the industry. He's not just like Joe Schmo off the street. He'd worked on Tiger Woods PGA for EA, NFL Street, End of Nations. He's done a bunch of other things. He started...
that Metroidvania Tiger Woods game.
It's my favorite of the Tiger Woods games.
I want that.
So good, like when you have to go back to the clubhouse because you forgot your clubs. Fucking crazy.
Mm-hmm.
He started Axiom Verge, like he started working on it just as like a side project. And eventually it grew into this incredibly epic, very grand Metroid. It's just Metroid.
Yeah, it's sort of like what's happening with Mighty Hero. What is it? Mighty Number 9. Mighty Number 9. It's sort of what's happening with that. Like, it's almost like this guy was like, I really want to play a new Metroid game. And they're sure as shit not going to give us one, so here you go.
Have you guys heard the story of when Reggie went to go see that game at E3?
To go see Axiom Verge? No.
Yeah, Jonathan Metz from the Radio Free Nintendo podcast was there. He saw this happen and got to pipe in on one of the things he talked about it on Radio Free Nintendo podcast. So Reggie walks in and says, "Hey, look, it's Metroid." And he said, "Somebody made a Metroid game." And then Jonathan Metz said to Reggie, "Well, somebody ought to."
I agree.
Seriously,
right?
if you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it for you.
Yeah, and it breaks my heart that this game isn't on a Nintendo platform, and it's just because the tools he used to make the game aren't compatible with Wii U.
Well, yeah, and it was originally supposed to be a 360 game.
Mm-hmm.
It was originally in development for PC and 360, and Sony happened to see the game at I think it was like PAX East or one of the indie game conferences, and they basically said, yeah, so we'll have that. Here's all the money that
I'll
you
take
need
one
to...
of those, please.
Yeah. And it was a brilliant move. This game is so fucking great.
You know, I almost feel like it kind of gets a leg up on Metroid because of the... How do I even say this? The Metroids are not a very interactive bad guy.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, they interact.
And I feel like
they suck.
Well, yeah.
They interact directly with your head.
But so I think Axiom Verge gets a little bit of a leg up there because of the... I mean, I don't even know their names. What are their names? Keep talking about the story. The faces.
Well, yeah, okay, so the story of Axiom Verge is you are a scientist named Trace, and you are conducting an experiment with your partner, and the experiment goes fucking horribly wrong. It blows up a building, kills everybody, including you, and then you wake up in basically Brinstar from the original Metroid, is pretty much where you wake up. And there is this voice that starts talking to you and kind of leads you off on your quest. And eventually you about, I don't know, maybe an hour or so into the game, you get down and there's this giant disembodied head that is talking about...
Like robot face.
Yeah, like, I don't want to give away too much
face.
of the story,
No,
really
don't.
just because it's such a new game.
I'm really looking forward to playing it, too.
Yeah, you've got this giant robot head that it starts telling you about the backstory of this world that you're in and how you need to, like, if you can release the nanobots, they'll be repaired and they can start doing the things that they were meant to do. And it's just like this really crazy story. But it does give you way more motivation as a character than Metroid ever really did.
Yeah, it's not just walk left and kill that thing. It's very interactive. They talk to you. The good guys talk to you. The bad guys talk to you. It's not just that thing's gonna kill me, so I'm gonna kill it first. There's actually like a thing happening.
Well, it's a much more modern game, and one of the other things that I feel I'm really excited to experience in this game is I have heard that it takes what you know about Super Metroid and screws with that. So, like, the things that you will expect from looking at something like, this is how this has gone in Metroid, but it is going to go completely different here. Like, it's going to screw with your expectations specifically as somebody who played Super Metroid.
Absolutely. And it is very much an evolution of this type of formula, specifically the very specific Metroid dystopian kind of one person on an alien planet, you know, fighting this crazy evil horde of shit. It is very much the evolution of that particular game trope and theme. It's just taken to the next level and is done so goddamn well. Like, it is one of the most perfectly paced games that I have ever played. You get to a point just when things start to get a little bit frustrating, and then there's a new gun or there's a new ability that, like, okay, good, now I'm back in and I'm ready to play, like, for another hour because I've got this new thing that I want to explore and see how it interacts in the world. And now that I've gotten this power up, I can go back to previous sections of the game and go through, you know, puzzles that I knew were there that I knew I could get to if I just got this thing. Now I got the thing, so I can go back to it. It's so good. Like,
you know what I love about it so much is that it's Metroid if, like, just a dude was there instead of Samus. Because in the beginning of the game, you're just a dude. You know, you're not a bounty hunter. You're not a mercenary. You're not
a failed scientist.
Yeah,
you
you're just
blew
a
up your
dude.
shit.
Like, you're wearing like a polo shirt and some slacks. Like, you're just a dude. And so it's really cool that, like, as you go through and learn about the game, you're doing it with him, so both of you kind of increase in ability together. It's very subtle and nuanced and really brilliantly done.
And you do get a magic trench coat as a power-up.
Which is always a good thing. It kind of makes you feel like the Doctor.
Like, it is not... Like, I'm not going to say it's a perfect game. There are a couple things that, like, I would count as a knock against it. The environments that you traverse throughout the course of the story are relatively forgettable.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like, I remember very clearly what Brinstar looks like. You know, I remember Metroid. This, I just finished the game a couple weeks ago. I couldn't fucking tell you what any of it looked like. One of them was pink, one of them was blue, one of them was brown. You know what I mean? Like, those were somewhat forgettable. And, like, I don't know, I think the biggest gripe that I had with the game is that one of the power-ups that you get 2 jump height increases, but you never get a double jump. And that just felt really shitty to me.
So
I know!
obsessed with double jumping.
Chris, back me up here.
Done and done. Double jumping is awesome. Like, granted,
Right,
you don't really
like,
get a double jump in Metroid. You get the friggin' gravity jump, which is jump forever.
Right, but
yeah.
that's what I was expecting. You know, so, like, I mean, and that is a completely minor quibble. Like, really the biggest problem that I have with the game is the kind of boring repetitiveness of the environments. But the enemies are so cool. The things that you can do to the enemies, because you're in this kind of weird sci-fi world, one of the weapons that you get can glitch the enemies and it changes them into something different, or in certain aspects you need it to solve puzzles. Like, there's so much involved in this game, and for the $20 or $18 or whatever it costs on the PlayStation Network, the Vita version isn't out yet. This is just PS4 right now. But if you only have a Vita, or if you have a PS4 and you have not purchased this game, I promise you it is worth the $20.
I
your
only have a
money's
Vita,
worth.
so I'm
I feel like that
waiting
would work really,
patiently.
really well on the Vita.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Like, I'm going to play through it again because it will be cross-save, which is one of the most amazing things that PlayStation does. I will now go back and play this on the Vita to maybe do the speed run, because it's got a little speed run section on there, and that's one of the trophies if you're into that sort of thing. There's still a lot more of the map to explore, and I finished the game without finding all of the weapons, without exploring every single part of the map. And so it encourages that replay as well, to go back in and find this other stuff. The music was great. Like, just everything about this game was brilliant. And again, the fact that it's done by Tom Happ himself.
That is pretty impressive.
Yeah, like, he
Is
did the music
amazing.
too. Like,
He
that's
did everything.
awesome.
Right, when you look at games, and when
Quentin
you finish a
Tarantino
game...
games. Or no, not the Quentin Tarantino. Robert Rodriguez.
Robert
games.
Rodriguez of games. You know, like, when you finish a game now, for the most part, I don't care whatever game it is. Like, if you look at the credits on fucking Angry Birds or Candy Crush, there's 1 million people that worked on those games. You know, look at the
There's
the
a lot
dev
of different
teams.
special kinds of candies.
Oh,
I mean,
sure.
the sprinkle ball alone. How many sprinkles are on that sprinkle ball?
That was
Like
a
100?
team of 100 just working on the sprinkle ball.
It's a
Right.
really realistic sprinkle ball.
Deciding just how close to the Pantone accuracy they were going to get each individual sprinkle. But, you know, you look at games that are made by these incredibly massive teams of people, and then you look at what one person with a vision can do, and it's mind-blowing.
Especially when he has no one fucking with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is absolutely, and I think that may be the best way to describe this game. If you were a fan of Super Metroid in particular, and you were like, here's my version of that game, that's what Axiom Verge is. This is Thomas Happ's version of what he would have done. And how can you not support that?
Oh, it's an amazing story, and I love that we live in a world where these kinds of games are happening. Like, I mean, obviously to a lesser extent, something like Cave Story or Gunman Clive.
Right.
Like, these one-man projects, and they turn out pretty great. But if Nintendo isn't going after this guy to help them create the next Metroid game, then they've lost their minds. Like,
I don't know if he can. He's already working on the sequel to this.
he is, and
Yeah, he doesn't need Nintendo anymore.
well, no, he doesn't need Nintendo, but something tells me that this guy, if Nintendo called him up and said, "Hey, do you want to make a Metroid game?" he'd probably be like, yeah, where do I sign?" Because I mean, I
Or
know.
he'd be like, "Suck it, I already did."
It could be one or the
Ooh,
other.
snap.
I think.
What you
now,
coming with now, Reg?
This is going to be an entirely personal reason why I loved this game so much, just as a little addendum here. But one of the things that I find really fascinating about our generation of gamers, people who have grown up, playing video games since they were, 6 or 7 years old. Now we're all in our 30s and we have continued to play this, and we'll probably be playing these until we're dead, right? Like, I don't ever foresee a time when I'm like, the PlayStation 9, I don't need that. I'm going to buy it. There was a part in this game where I was getting frustrated because I couldn't get out of my own way to figure out what I needed to do. And my daughter Katie was sitting on the couch next to me watching this game. And she's 5. And I was like, God damn it, how do I get up there?
You
And
swore in front of the child?
Yes. And her response was just, Daddy, just do this thing. And that was it. That was what I had to do. So the game kind of harkens back to what it was like when I was a kid. Like, instantly in that moment, I was taken right back to being a little kid playing Metroid and Super Metroid. My own child was experiencing it the same way that I had experienced that game. And, like, I completely fell in love with Axiom Verge at that point.
I think about that often, especially when I go back and play retro games that I had never played before, and I'll play through them and be like, you expected little kids to do this? How do you even know I don't know where to go.
But then we did,
like
I was saying
did,
earlier,
yeah.
I'm experiencing new retro games that I had never played when I was younger, and they're challenging for me now, and I think to myself, how the hell did I beat Ninja Gaiden as a kid?
Yeah,
Like,
how does an 8-year-old beat Ninja Gaiden?
How did we
But
get
you
through any
did.
of this stuff without game facts?
Yeah.
Well,
I was blown away that my 5-year-old daughter was able to just come in and be like, well, just do that thing. And it was so matter of fact.
Put
It
this
was
thing over
so
there, and then you'll get
obvious
there.
to her
Yeah.
what had to be done. And because I have 30 years experience of playing video games, I couldn't get out of my own goddamn way to try and figure out how to get up there. I was like, well, I could do this thing or that thing or whatever. And
If only I had a double jump.
yeah. And it was so simple. And it was just a really beautiful kind of transcendental moment of that was when I was a kid.
Which is pretty hilarious because Katie is terrible at video games.
Yeah, she's really not good at them.
So it's kind of
Just
awesome
this-
that she schooled you in this game.
She really did. It was a beautiful thing. I loved this game. I cannot recommend this highly enough. Like, this is... I imagine if I had to guess at the end of the year when we're writing our end of the year article, it will be
Portal
between... No, you can't do Portal 2 again.
Doing it every year until there's a Portal 3.
It will be somewhere between Axiom Verge and...
You're not allowed on that show.
No, you're really not.
You will be taking the week off.
My end of the year list will probably be between Axiom Verge and Metal Gear Solid 5. Like, I feel so strongly about this game that I can already say I doubt there's going to be much better this year.
Bold statement, sir.
It is
Fucking great.
Well, I mean, I'm really looking forward to playing it. It seems to speak to everything I like about gaming these days. So
Yep. It is such a game for you.
it is
And
right up my alley.
there is a section of the game later in the game, this doesn't spoil anything, where you get the ability to put in passwords. So the very first thing I did
Was Justin
when I got
Bailey?
the password was type in Justin Bailey, and it does a thing. I'm not going to tell you the thing it does.
Do you run around in your
but
underwear?
it does a thing. I'm not going to tell you the thing it does, Chris, but it does a thing.
Does Narpa's sword do something?
I don't know. I didn't try that.
I'm gonna
So,
have to. All
It
right.
was beautiful.
Did you type in hot coffee?
No, I didn't want to see those giant robot things having sex.
I could go for some pixel boobs.
Who couldn't?
Well, on that note,
There's your episode title.
that's gonna be it for the night. Those were some pretty cool games, man. April was a good month for good month for us. I still have no idea what Dean was going to talk about, but I'm sure it was related to something on Cartoon Network. Anyway,
Going back in the retro archives and pulling out some Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy shit.
yeah. Well, Dan, your name sounds closest to Dean, so do the thing.
Show notes. We've got them, and we put stuff in them. Read them, fuckers.
Is that a thing we have to do?
I don't know. No. Everything we talked about this week, Axiom Verge, Space Harrier, and all its ridiculousness that goes along, Cycloptic Woolly Mammoth.
Floating heads.
Floating
Dragons. Trees. Blowing up trees.
Metroid Prime Trilogy. Everything's going to be in the show notes. Check it out. It's going to have links to our social sites, our Facebook, our Instagram, our Tumblr, our Twitter accounts. You can follow Chris at GeekAidChris. You can follow me at GeekAidDan. Check them out.
You can
Dean
follow
writes
me
them.
at the store.
Yeah, you can follow Tiff
I
around
might
in
call
the
the
store and
cops,
be
though.
creepy. You bastards. Leave my wife alone. Show notes. I feel that was about as coherent as Dean does.
That was an excellent Dean impression. Very, very
10 out of
elegant.
10. Marge DeFalco.
All right, everybody. Join us next week for trivia time. Trivia is back after our kind of sort of month off, so it's going to be fun. I should probably
Yeah,
start.
kind of sort of month off where you took a point away from me.
Yeah, you'll earn it back.
Oh, get over it.
I will. I'm going to win.
We shall see. Anyway, thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you next week, and have a wonderful rest of your lives, I guess. Good night. Good plan. I smell like a Mega Man air freshener right now.
Oh
awesome.
God, it's so bad. Oh, it's so bad. The Mega Man air fresheners are like, death and cheese.
Well, it certainly doesn't smell like death and cheese, but I don't know if it smells like Mega Man. Anyway.
That was the worst sign-off in 48 episodes, Chris. You should be getting better at this shit.
It's a race to the
Have a
bottom,
wonderful-
man. It's a race to the bottom.
God damn it.
I thought it was a nice
dude,
sentiment.
I love you and all, but that was horrible.
Yeah,
Fuck.
I kind of backed myself into a corner there. I didn't know where to go.
Allow myself to introduce
Myself.
myself.
Oh, shit.